because it's all about how do you prioritize your day and your week and your month and your quarter. And we believe, and everything shows that this is correct, that the best way to make the most revenue for your company is to prioritize those accounts where people are showing purchase intent.
Welcome to the Modern Marketing Engine podcast, hosted by Bernie Borges. This is the podcast for the modern marketer who wants to hear from their peers in the trenches and the occasional analyst or rockstar influencer, sharing strategies and tactics about what's working in modern marketing. Be sure to listen to the end of each episode for Bernie's summary and takeaways so you can plan your next move in your own modern marketing journey.
Hey there, welcome to episode 252 of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast. I'm Bernie Borges, CMO of Vengreso, and your host. Hey, thanks for listening. My guest on this episode is John Steinert, Chief Marketing Officer at TechTarget. John, welcome to the Modern Marketing Engine podcast.
Hey, Bernie, it's great to be here.
Well, thanks for being here, John. I'm excited about our topic. We are going to dive into B2B buyer intent signals and how buyers, or how marketers rather, can harness them in account-based marketing. And before we get into it, I kind of want to tee up, John, the whole why. Why are we talking about this topic? Because it's important to kind of frame that up for the listener. And what you and I had kind of summarized is really that marketing teams are really focused on driving insights from all this data that they collect while they're trying to generate sales opportunities. They need to have a strong definition of their ideal customer profile and, of course, their target market segments and, of course, their identity and buyer's journey and so forth. However, John, all that data that they're collecting is so voluminous that it's really difficult for marketers to identify buyer intent signals without having some really good methods in place. So that's what we're going to get into. That's the why behind that. Looking forward to it. And I'm here to confess, John, that I don't know a lot about this topic, so I'm really excited about diving into it with you. But before we do that, give us a little introduction to your company, TechTarget, and of course, your role there as CMO.
So, Bernie, I've only been at TechTarget for 3 years, but the thing that really attracted me to the company was the innovations it was making in the purchase intent space. And the fact is that we're now the global leader in purchase intent-driven marketing and sales services for enterprise tech companies. So we've come a long way in the last 3 years, but our history is a little bit different. I'm not going to get into the history. We are very much purchase intent focused now and for the future. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today.
Fantastic. So let's begin with those signals. Why are we talking so much about these intent signals? And really, where does it fit into the marketer's role?
So the word signals is really helpful in this space because for 15, 20 odd years, we're thinking about the internet as being something that we consumed more than anything else, this consumption of content. But there's a flip side to that. And very recently, for good reasons, for bad reasons, we've grown our awareness that the flip side is about the signals through our consumption that we're throwing off, through our behaviors that we're throwing off. So signals describes what we can know about an interaction with an environment, be it the internet or anything else. And so we talk about that in terms of our need to understand what's going on. And we use that term as the indicator that we have an ability to understand what's going on. So the big family of things that one wants to analyze or should analyze, we call signals. And the point I'm making here is that there are a ton of them. And to build off what you said is that there's a great difference between the availability of signal and the importance and potential value of it.
What do you mean by that, John?
Well, so we did a little calculation, sort of back of the napkin calculation of how many signals are coming through the TechTarget network. So we run a network of 140 plus websites really focused on enterprise tech. And we said that really And we started counting them and we sort of stopped because we said, well, there may be at least 4 quadrillion signals happening in our network in a given period of time, call it a year. And a lot of those signals probably aren't high priority. So the volume of signals is overwhelming, as you stated, for marketers. And so the trick for marketers and really for sellers too is, how do I ignore things that aren't of high value, and how do I prioritize things that are? And that's what we try to help with.
Okay. And marketers, because your focus is on B2B technology, right? Enterprise technology?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. So generally then, John, is it a fair, remember I said I don't know a lot about this, so I may be asking dumb questions here, but generally we're talking about marketers that are trying to understand these signals in the context of their own ABM, account-based marketing efforts. Is that right?
Well, sort of. So what marketers are trying to do is they're trying to find the people who should be interested in what they have to offer in terms of a solution, right? So marketers have to find those people. And to find those people, they need some signal that those people exist. And you can buy demographics, which are created from signals that trails left on the internet, where you can buy groups of people based on biological attributes. But then in the B2B space, and particularly in the B2B tech space, those demographics, which are commonly used in consumer approaches, are of little use. So that signal, demographic signal, is of no value to you. So there's lots of those signals. They're available and they're used for ad targeting, for instance, but in B2B, that's of no use to you. So you've got to look for other signals. You're still trying to find the people. So how do you find the people? That's the first question. And then how do you determine whether or not they have a current need for what you sell?
And is that what you mean by purchase intent in this topic that we're discussing? Is that kind of the heart of it, is understanding and finding the people who are demonstrating some purchase intent?
Right. So that's exactly it. So where do you go to get signals? The most common place, the most obvious place for B2B is going to be the internet. But there's a ton of signals on the internet from people surfing for any number of reasons that are completely irrelevant to a purchase. Now, there are also signals that tell you important things about people or about companies, and vendors like us are calling those intent signals. But I want to be very clear that there are behavioral signals. Intent is a signal within an umbrella group called behavioral signals. But purchase intent, the intent to purchase something, is distinct and different from signals in general. So you could have interest signals with no purchase, or you could have interest signals in the presence of a buyer's journey, and the two are very different.
Can you elaborate on that? So what's the difference between an interest signal and a purchase intent signal?
Sure. Most of the signals in the B2B space on the internet are going to be interest signals. People are consuming information on topics that interest them.
Okay.
And they can interest them from any number of directions. So they consume a lot of sports information during the day, but that has no value to somebody selling a B2B solution, a B2B technology solution. They are interested in technology news, mergers and acquisitions that might impact them. Let's say you're talking about somebody with a technical responsibility that might impact them because Oracle has just bought their company, right? But that doesn't mean that they're going to immediately launch a buyer's journey. So you're looking for a very particular type of signal that says, we are starting to get serious about solving a business problem. And so the trick is, how do you surface that kind of signal from general interest signals?
Right. I'm thinking of our own world, John, at Vengreso. We are pretty prolific at producing content. We have 2 podcasts, as you know. We produce several videos per week and blog content. So we produce a lot of educational content and a lot of people consume it. But we also know that many of them fall into that category you've just described as interest signals and not necessarily purchase signals. So let's segue to how brands, how marketers are actually making use of the real purchase intent signals. What are the roles that are actually using that, and what are they doing with that information?
So I would say that there are really 3 categories of role that we see people using this stuff for. And the most obvious are demand marketers on the marketing side, and inside sales management and inside salespeople themselves. So underneath these groups, there's more specificity in the role. But the third one that I should also mention is on the product marketing side, they are also using this stuff, and they're using it to understand their market, understand customer, not just prospect, but customer requirements. And they're using it to guide the modification of their content efforts, particularly in sales enablement, but also general content efforts going forward. So 3 areas I separate out in marketing: demand marketing from product or portfolio marketing, and then the sales organization.
So, with those 3 distinct roles, then are each of them using the data differently and applying the data differently within the context of their roles? I think it's a rhetorical question, John, but maybe you can elaborate, kind of unpack that a little bit. Like, how does a demand marketer use it? How does an inside sales team use it? I think you've commented nicely on product marketing, but maybe elaborate on demand marketers and inside sales.
Yeah, I mean, so I think you have to look at it at 2 levels at least. And one is at the macro or bulk level, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And then the other is at the micro level, at the level of individual interaction. So one is kind of a group and aggregate view, and the other is at a very individual, very tactical view. And so if we start at the tactical view, I think it's helpful because it illustrates how sales is using the data, but also how marketing can use it to improve the things that marketing does. So what is in the data is a couple of things. It starts with the account. The data identifies the accounts that are actually in market searching for a solution to a business problem. Then inside the account, it tells you the people who are already involved in that research activity. And it tells you who they are and how to contact them. And then it tells you what those particular people are interested about with respect to a very specific type of technology solution. And it tells you this in 2 ways. It tells you the competitive set that they're interested in, so the actual vendors, and then it tells you the topical areas around the solution. So in B2B solutions, they can be very complex, and there are multiple ways into a solution. There are different ways that people think about the solution. For example, it could be the security concerns related to the solution category, or it could be the efficiency benefits in the same category. And the data will tell you what this particular individual's perspective and primary focus is. So I can go over that again, but basically it tells you the account, the people, the interests. And this is critically important if you're going to make an outbound call or an outreach of any kind, because it allows you to be relevant. Now you have to think for a moment, or you need a sales enablement team to say, okay, if the client's interested in A, I will say X. If the client's interest is from the B perspective, I will say Y. But given the information, you now have the potential to do that. And so if you're a little bit more experienced than a standard BDR, if you're an ISR, you can do that yourself. BDR needs to get this stuff from a sales and enablement team. And so you can see how that concept of what is this individual interested in, and that they are interested in, what are they interested in, can segue back into marketing and say, well, what is this company or what are companies like this interested in, as we try to go one-to-many with marketing campaigns that will appeal. Let me be more specific. It's impossible for a marketing team to cover every possible base of types of interest in a particular category. And it's super helpful if you can reduce that total set of ways that people are thinking about solving this particular category of business problems to a smaller group to say, let's emphasize campaign activity, messaging in these areas. If you know exactly where the market is on your topic, a solution area. So what marketers do is they study the data. They say, these are the things that are resonating with the marketplace right now. This is how I can bucket groups, segments within the market, micro segments, and I'm going to launch my campaigns using messaging against those particular plays.
So that's more macro then, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll be back with the rest of my conversation with John Steinert. We've surveyed 862 B2B sales reps across 5 industries to measure their digital selling skills. The results? Despite the digital age that we live and work in, most sales professionals lack the basic skills to find, engage, and connect on LinkedIn with people that they need to meet to start more sales conversations. Get the Vengreso State of Digital Selling with LinkedIn 2019 report to learn how sales professionals stack up on requisite modern selling skills. You'll also learn how you can arrange to get your own custom digital selling benchmark report for your sales team. To get the State of Digital Selling with LinkedIn 2019 report, go to stateofdigitalselling.com. Okay, so as you were describing the tactical, I'm going to use the metaphor of salivating. I think, anybody that is either in sales or in demand gen who wants to produce great leads for salespeople really has to salivate at the thought of knowing who the accounts are, who the people are, what their actual interests are, who they're looking at, et cetera. That's got to be just extremely valuable information. So, John, maybe you can comment on where do you see the marketplace? You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that TechTarget has really come a long way in the last 3 years. And I think from my own observation, you've really emerged as the category leader. And so comment on where do you see the adoption curve as it relates to this B2B buyer intent signal, especially when you look across your own client base at TechTarget. You've got a lot of clients in technology. So where are they in the adoption curve?
So here's a good way to think about this. On the one hand, the promise of really clear behavioral signals is huge. It's obvious, right? That's why I joined the company. I said, this is unbelievable. And you can see in this being of great value to field sales. But then you also have to think about what are the sort of systemic and process barriers we've put in the way? How have we created rules on how we want our inside sales folks or our BDRs to operate that might get in the way of the obvious? And so part of the adoption challenge really is, how do you enable a sales organization to leverage behavioral data when there are barriers put in front of them that prevent them from doing this? Let me try to give you a really good example. What we tell our clients is about the behavior of people who may not have ever visited their own website. Now, we can get into the fact that, yes, we also show them their website visitors and the accounts from there too, and we add the real people into that. But let's say they haven't connected our system to their website for some reason. they have rules in place that say you shouldn't reach out to anybody who's not a lead. And a lead by definition is somebody who is engaged with their content. So by definition, they're saying that doesn't matter that those folks in the marketplace have demand for what we sell. We're not going to talk to them unless they've shown an interest in us.
Okay.
They did that for operational reasons, right? Because they wanted to reduce cold calling. But ironically, in fact, because high velocity sales outreach has proven valuable and has proven to pay for itself. And I was noticing that you had SalesLoft on with you earlier in the year. They noticed that that works. So people are going to do cold calling, and they may not cold call to accounts that are interested. So what we're saying is there shouldn't be any cold calling. If we can show you the accounts and we can rank them for you in order of the intensity of their signals and the breadth of the signals, the breadth means the number of people in the organization. Wouldn't you want to prioritize those companies ahead of your call list?
So what I'm thinking, John, is that I don't know if SQL is part of the vernacular in your world, but isn't that really what we're talking about is a sales qualified lead?
Well, a sales qualified lead is still an individual. So I'd call it a qualified account.
Okay.
What is a qualified account? We think what we see going on is that the definition of a qualified account is changing. And it's changing from one that was based on some judgment call of whether or not a salesperson wants to go after it. Obviously, the account's been assigned to the salesperson, so I'm not saying sales and SQL is an illegitimate thing, but it's changing from SQLs only to something that starts with the definition of ideal customer profile.
Okay.
So this informs things like an ABM list. And companies are getting much smarter at understanding their historical data and understanding how where they've had success before can be mapped into the accounts that are not customers. So they're creating these ideal customer profiles that say, these are the accounts that we ought to be able to sell to. And that's where you start. Call that an ABM list, right? So if you start with that, even that list is too big. As you know, because you've got a background in both marketing and sales, nobody is assigned less work than they have time to do in today's world, right? Everybody's assigned more stuff, more accounts, more of everything to follow up on. So what we're trying to do is help people know where to go first. And that's why we call the platform we serve the data up in Priority Engine, because it's all about how do you prioritize your day and your week and your month and your quarter. And we believe, and everything shows that this is correct, that the best way to make the most revenue for your company is to prioritize those accounts where people are showing purchase intent.
Makes all the sense in the world, John. So where I'd like to go next as sort of our final topic before I segue over to the summary is let's talk about sort of the staffing requirements associated with this, because just thinking, as I'm listening to you and I'm just processing it all. And like I said at the beginning of our conversation, I don't know a lot. I don't have a lot of background on this. I can see having an impact on the way a marketing and sales organization is structured. So how does it impact marketing and how does it impact sales for those companies that are really devoted to working with a company like TechTarget to really harness the power of buyer intent signals?
Well, so the super wonderful thing I think about this is that in reality, there's very little technology requirement. All you really need is a computer and a phone to take advantage of real purchase intent, because we're going to show you who you ought to be reaching out to and what you ought to be reaching out to them about. And so very small companies get huge value out of this. And so some of our best clients are companies that are small startups in the tech space who know that they need to start really generating a lot of momentum. So they're willing to pay for the data, and they're going to apply sort of hybrid sales and marketing types people to use it very aggressively. So the staffing requirement is very light too. Now, on the flip side of that is the beauty is that so many different types of roles can get use out of it that the usefulness is very broad. As I said, you can use it in field sales, you can use it in inside sales, you can use it in business development, you can use it in lead qualification, you can use it for demand gen, you can even use it for advertising because it allows you to direct the advertising directly to only those people who are showing true purchase signals. So the staffing requirement is small, but the staffing applicability is very broad.
Fascinating. Okay. All right, John. Again, I'm processing it all. I'm going to segue now to the part of our episode where I'm going to summarize kind of the key points that we discussed, and then I will invite you to comment or elaborate or fill in any holes and anything that I may jog your memory on. And then we'll ask you for some social contact information, and we'll bring this episode to a wrap. So we begin our conversation with a brief introduction to your company, TechTarget, where you are the CMO. You mentioned that you've been there about 3 years now, and that the company is really focused on delivering purchase intent services globally for enterprise technology companies. You do that by supplying, you said, 140 plus websites on enterprise technology. And that really allows your client to identify intent signals. Imagine that. And so we talked about exactly what that is. What is intent signals? And you compared it to, we've been using the internet publicly now for roughly 15 years, and we are consumers of content, and we send off a lot of signals about ourselves. But in B2B, a lot of those signals are really kind of useless because they're more demographic and they're really not displaying, especially when you look at the volume of signals that are sent. The trick for marketers and sellers in B2B is to really know what matters, really understand the signals that are coming from the people that are in the ideal customer profile. And so it really boils down to, how do you find the people who are showing some purchase intent? And you said that it really comes across as behavioral signals, showing two levels of behavior: interest signals and purchase signals. And you said that sometimes interest signals don't necessarily mean that they have a purchase intent. So you talked about the way that these interest signals, and really not mostly, purchase signals per se, purchase signals are really impacting people in demand generation, inside sales, and product marketing. And then you said that when you break it down even further, there's the macro level where marketers can really sort of understand the different interests and bucket them and learn from them and then devise plans around them. And then tactically speaking, which is really, I think, where most companies are focused, is knowing which accounts are currently searching for a solution, who are the people in those accounts that are involved in that research, and what contact information is associated with them, what they're interested in relative to those tech solutions, including both topics and even competitive interests that they're exploring, and then really being able to harness that information. And then we talked about how getting that information to sales reps, the implications there is that historically sales reps have been really prevented from calling on people that are not quote unquote leads as defined by their organization. So it really begins with understanding the ideal customer profile. That is the ABM list, the account-based marketing list. However, using your technology, which you call Priority Engine, really enabling the sales team to know where the priorities are, where they should be spending their time calling, so that they maximize their efficiency on calling on people who are in fact showing purchase intent signals. And you said that there's not a whole lot of technology required, a PC and a phone, and then it really impacts roles spanning field sales, inside sales, business development, demand generation, advertising, and each of them can harness these purchase intent signals in the ways that they need to get done what they need to get done. So, John, I'll leave my summary there. Is there anything that you would like to add?
I could just amplify a couple key points. So I made the point that there are signals, and then there's intent signals, intention signals, and then there's real purchase intent inside, and that there's some very distinct differences between them, but I'll try to be brief. What we do is we create content specifically to illuminate buyers' journeys. So we have 150 editors and more than 1,000 writers who do writing for us, creating content to aid companies in making enterprise tech solution decisions. And so we know everything about the patterns of purchase history, and we build the content to support the purchase process. And it's because of that that we're so confident, having analyzed what actually happened in a lot of these buyers' journeys over the years, we can be so confident that we have real purchase intent data here. So that's what differentiates it from simply scraping signals off the internet of interest in sort of headline topics. We give this example of, you could be scraping Google searches on terms like router, and it could just as easily be a woodworking tool as it would be a networking tool. So you have to get very specific in order to elicit real understanding. You have to get very specific about your knowledge of what's in the content. You can't just borrow it and scrape what's available on the open web.
So what I hear you saying, John, is that what TechTarget has done is utilize or leverage, rather, your empirical understanding of what are the topics that enterprise technology solution buyers need to understand, and then you're producing a lot of content that's based on the data that knows that these are in fact topics that are important to them, and then capturing information about those people who are in fact showing those purchase intent signals through their journey of consuming multiple pieces of content, right? Not just once, but many times.
Yeah, think of it as, on a grand scale, we create buying catalogs for people buying very complex things. So think of it as how to buy a house and all the steps you need to go through and why you should buy a 2-story versus a ranch, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for technology. And so everything about the process of buying this complex thing that's very expensive and risky for your company. And here's the information that will help support you as you go through that process. And in exchange, we ask that you register and permit us to share your information about you with tech vendors. So we've created this environment that's mutually supportive of buyers and sellers. We have this permission, which makes us very different. That's why we're able to share information down to the contact level with tech vendors. And so it's very different from assembling random signals and trying to make sense out of them and then saying that that provides a much stronger signal. Our signals are strong signals, and nobody else builds them the way we do. And that's why ours are so successful.
Terrific. Well, that point you just made about the permission that buyers are giving that allows that interaction between buyer and seller to happen is really a service that serves them both. So thank you for making that point. That's a terrific clarifying point. John, we're about out of time. So where would you like to send my listener to learn more about you and TechTarget and just connect with you online?
So to connect with me online, I think a great place to go is TechTarget_CMO on Twitter, and with me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I really connect with people who have some, just like TechTarget does, have some value to exchange with me. So people in the industry, people with needs in technology, or if you can explain that you listen to the podcast, that would be great. I'll connect on LinkedIn. And then techtarget.com is a great place to go. To understand more about what we do, you can go to any one of our 140 sites. They're mostly called search, and then the tech topic. So searchstorage.com would be one. Search networking would be another.
Got it. Well, John, my listener knows that all of that will be linked up on the show notes page at our website at vengreso.com. So, John, on that note, I want to thank you so much for joining me here on this episode of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast.
Anytime, Bernie. It's a great show.
Get the Vengreso State of Digital Selling with LinkedIn 2019 report to learn how sales professionals stack up on basic modern selling skills. You'll hear from 15 executives with their insights and key recommendations. And you'll also learn how you can arrange to get your own custom digital selling benchmark report for your sales team. To get the report, just go to stateofdigitalselling.com.
This wraps up another inspiring episode of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast. If you want to share this podcast with a friend, let them know that we're available on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Podcasts. And we love 5-star reviews. If you are not subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast player so you don't miss an episode. You can read the show notes for each episode at vengreso.com. While you're there, sign up to receive the show notes delivered to your inbox through our weekly alerts. And be sure to also check out our Selling with Social podcast hosted by Vengreso CEO Mario Martinez Jr. Again, you'll find our show notes at vengreso.com. And that's one S in Vengreso. Tune in again next week when Bernie Borges brings you another inspiring interview to help you thrive on your modern marketing journey.